Part 1. Stories that help develop natural reflexes. Have you ever wondered why some people speak English so naturally, even though they are not native speakers? They don't seem to think much, don't need to search for words in their heads for too long, but their words just flow out smoothly and fluently. Today, I will tell you a story that is not only for entertainment, but also to quietly plant in you the seeds of language reflexes, which can grow into natural communication skills later. The story begins with David, a 27-year-old guy from Spain, who has just arrived in New York to take his first job at an international company. David has been studying English for more than 10 years. His grammar is quite solid, his vocabulary is also good. But there is one thing that always makes David feel insecure: communication reflexes. He could understand most of what his boss said, what his colleagues said, and even watch American movies without subtitles. But whenever he needed to answer immediately, David was at a loss. His mind ran through a series of questions. Should I use the present perfect or the past simple? Should I add an adverb? Is this word pronounced correctly? While David was still self-censoring, the other person began to feel awkward silence. As a result, the conversation became awkward and halting. One day, after work, David decided to go to a small coffee shop near the company. He ordered a cappuccino and sat in the corner of the room, pulling out a book to read to escape the fatigue of the new city. Not long after, an older man sat at the table next to him. He started a conversation. "Rough day at work, huh?" David looked up, a little surprised. He nodded, smiling. "Yeah. Pretty hectic, actually." He smiled gently. "I could tell by the look on your face. Mind if I join you? It's crowded anyway." David hesitated a bit, but then nodded. And so the conversation began. He introduced himself as George, a former travel journalist who had traveled to more than 40 countries. George had a habit of asking questions whenever he met someone who looked foreign. The initial conversation was just, "Where are you from? What do you do? What is your impression of New York?" But George had a very special way of speaking. He didn't interrupt, didn't probe. He often added sentences like, "I know exactly what you mean. That's actually quite common for newcomers." Every time David hesitated, unable to find the word, George waited patiently, looking straight ahead, nodding encouragingly. No urgent glances, no sighs. Adding key details so the listener can feel the change. After only about 15 minutes, David began to feel comfortable. He no longer paid too much attention to grammar, no fear of making mistakes. The answers became longer. Sometimes he even forgot he was using English, just pouring out his emotions. "I guess what I really miss is my mom's cooking. It's funny, I never thought I'd say that. Back home I used to complain all the time, you know?" George laughed. He told the story of his mother's cooking of barbecue so bad that even dogs wouldn't eat it. They both burst out laughing. And in that moment, English was no longer a test. It was just a tool for sharing. Emphasize the message to make the audience absorb it. David didn't realize it, but it was when he laughed, when he forgot to think about grammar, that his language reflexes kicked in. His brain automatically connected vocabulary, automatically chose the appropriate structure without needing to consult beforehand. And that is the natural reflex that many people who have studied for decades still don't have. Slight transition, opening up for the next part. That conversation not only made David more comfortable, it accidentally opened up a path for him to practice natural reflexes without him knowing. Just a few weeks later, David began to change significantly. But I'll tell you about that later. Ending. Leaving a lingering sound plus, suggesting the viewer to continue. Sometimes what we lack is not more grammar, more new words, but a safe enough space to make mistakes, to hesitate, to learn to believe in yourself when speaking. In the next part, I will tell you about the unwilling journey that David had to go through, bringing him to the point where English became almost a natural reflex. A journey that you can also learn a lot to apply yourself. Part 2. The unworthy journey that makes reflexes take the right. We stop at the moment David burst out laughing with George in a small cafe in the middle of New York. Right? A fleeting moment, but enough to instill in David the feeling that English can also be a joy, not just a fear. A few days later, David returned to the coffee shop. George wasn't always there, but for David, it became a safe haven. He liked to sit there, listening to people talk, letting the conversation flow past his ears. One Friday afternoon, David had just stepped out of the shop when the phone rang. It was Anna, a fast-talking American marketing colleague. "Hey, David, what are you up to tonight? A bunch of us are hitting O'Reilly's for happy hour. You in?" David paused. His mind automatically raced through a series of worries. What if they talk and laugh too fast? What if I don't understand the story? What if I say it wrong? What if they think I'm stupid? But then he remembered George's hearty laugh, remembered the feeling of no one judging him, and he let out a breath. "Yeah, sure. I could use a drink." "Yeah, okay. I need a drink too." Speeding up the conversation, lots of friendly conversation. O'Reilly's is a small pub, dark wooden tables, warm yellow lights, the smell of beer and chips mixed together. Anna and a few others are already sitting there laughing and talking. David sits down timidly, fiddling with his beer bottle. "So, David, first week in New York. How's it treating you?" "So, David, how's your first week in New York?" This time, David doesn't try to script it. He just tells it, honestly, it's overwhelming, to be honest. The city moves so fast. People talk so fast. I'm always playing catch up. Everyone laughs. A guy named Mike taps David on the shoulder. "Man, that's New York for ya. Blink and you'll miss half the story." "Oh, New York is like that. Blink and you miss half the story." The whole table laughed. No one scrutinized David's English. On the contrary, they told him all kinds of weird stories about his first day at work, the first time he got lost on the subway, the first time he got ripped off by a taxi. The laughter erased the fear, and David's brain, unprepared, was forced to automatically listen, understand, respond to keep up with the flow of the story, emphasizing the natural repetition. These evenings were repeated. It wasn't because David was trying to practice speaking. It was just because he started to enjoy connecting. Then his reflexes gradually sharpened. When Mike joked, "If you can survive a New York landlord, you can survive anything. If you can survive the New York landlords, you can survive everything," David burst out laughing, blurting out, "Yeah, or maybe end up homeless with a great story to tell." No one paid attention to whether it was a perfect grammar structure. They just burst out laughing. And David realized, speaking fluently is not about being 100% correct, but speaking in a way that makes people laugh, understand, and feel. Introducing new conflicts to develop higher-level reflexes. Then the company had a new project. The boss chose David to be in charge of presenting to customers. It was an American company, of course everything would be in English. At that moment, the old worries returned. No more conversations over beers. Now it was an official meeting, $1 million contract, and a critical eye. David almost refused, but Anna encouraged him. "You're the one who understands the numbers best. I'll help with the slides. Don't overthink it." David nodded and began to prepare, describing the process of overcoming fear, the most powerful reflexive part. At first, David wrote the entire speech and memorized it. But after only a few practices, he realized something was wrong. His voice was stiff, his sentences were unnatural. When he forgot a sentence, the whole speech collapsed. So he threw away the paper, just kept the main ideas and practiced speaking according to them, not necessarily the exact words. The presentation took place on Monday morning. David walked into the meeting room, his heart pounding. But then, as he opened his mouth to speak, he heard himself. So here's the thing. Most projections only look at last quarter. But what we've done is take a 2-year average, which actually tells a very different story. His voice was steady. Each eye nodded. A customer smiled, taking notes. David couldn't remember exactly whether he used the present perfect or the past simple. But he clearly remembered the customer's slight laugh, the look of approval, and the handshake at the end of the meeting, inserting a profound message so that the audience absorbed the lesson. From the small coffee shop with George, to the beer parties with colleagues, to the Monday morning meeting room, David didn't study any grammar. He just put himself in situations that made his brain react. And reactions, can't happen if you just sit at your desk and study without speaking, without touching, without making mistakes. Give a small example for the audience to compare. It's like riding a bike. No one learns how to balance just from books. You will fall, get hurt, but then one day you don't think about it anymore and just go. The same goes for language. The more confident you try, the more deeply your brain remembers the combination of words, intonation, and pitch. And so, without realizing it, you have reflexes. Prepare to lead to part 3 to complete the journey. David doesn't stop there. After the presentation, he confidently participates in more activities, making English become endogenous rather than imported. But this journey has a rather unexpected turn, when David is forced to use English to save an important relationship. Part 3. When English becomes a bridge between souls. A gentle opening, as if sitting and telling a story over a cup of tea. We've been with David since he was stuttering out simple sentences to confidently presenting to clients. But the journey isn't over yet, because natural reflexes don't just develop from work pressure or beer breaks. They also grow from the most human moments, when we need to speak up to hold on to something important to us. A month after that presentation, David was given a short leave from his boss. He decided to fly to Toronto to visit his cousin Luis, who was studying there. Luis was 6 years younger than David, the only person in the family David considered a brother. They met at a crowded pizza place. Luis looked thinner, his eyes dark. "Dude, you look like crap," David teased. Luis just shrugged, smiling wryly, revealing the conflict, letting the audience stick to the story. During the meal, David noticed that Luis was not really focused. He kept holding his phone, texting continuously, and his face darkened from time to time. David finally couldn't help it. "All right, man, what's going on? You're here, but you're not really here." Luis sighed. It turned out that he had just had a big argument with his girlfriend, Emily, a Canadian girl they had known for over a year. Luis was worried because his English was still awkward, afraid of not expressing himself enough, afraid of being misunderstood. The small argument about who will move in with whom turned into a fierce battle, and Emily left in anger. Luis was afraid of losing Emily, but didn't know how to call, to talk, to apologize properly. Increasing the tempo, putting David in the role of bridge. And so David, who used to be the most afraid of speaking English in the family, became the support. "Okay, listen," David said, putting his hand on Luis's shoulder. "I'll help you figure this out. You just need to talk to her. Don't hide behind texts." Luis shook his head. "But my English, I get lost when I'm emotional, man. I'll mess it up." David chuckled. He remembered himself a few months ago, just as nervous. "You won't, because it's not about perfect English. It's about saying what's real. Let's practice." They sat on the sidewalk, amid the bustling Toronto crowd. David pretended to be Emily. Luis practiced speaking. At first he stammered, used the wrong tense, and got the words wrong, but David was patient. No, don't say, "I want that you forgive me." That sounds weird. Say, "I want you to forgive me." Or simpler, "I hope you can forgive me." Luis repeated. Each sentence was like untying a knot. Finally, David said, "Forget grammar. Just look at me and say it like you mean it." Luis took a deep breath, his eyes slightly red. "Emily, I was scared. Scared to leave my family, my country, my language. But I'm more scared of losing you." David smiled, nodded. "That's it, man. That's what she needs to hear. Now call her." Pushing emotions high, the fateful call. Luis tremblingly dialed the number. On the other end of the line was Emily's hoarse voice. "Luis." Luis glanced at David, then closed his eyes and said in one breath, "Emily, I've been an idiot. I let my fear of losing myself come before us. But the truth is, I'd rather learn 1,000 languages badly than lose you, because with you, it's the first time I feel home, even in a foreign country." Silence. Then Emily giggled, choking. Luis, that's the most beautiful broken English I've ever heard. David sat next to her, his hand tightening on her shoulder. He felt more clearly than ever. Language is not for showing off, not for proving that you are good. It is for keeping people. To say I love you, to apologize, to not lose precious things just because of fear of saying something wrong. Many people study English all their lives but still don't dare to use it. They are afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being laughed at, afraid of judgmental looks. But in the end, the only thing worse than saying something wrong is saying nothing. Then one day he realized, the relationship is far away, the opportunity is lost, just because he didn't dare to open his mouth. As for David, the trip to Toronto taught him a lesson even greater than the million-dollar presentations. When he returned to New York, he continued his work with a new mindset. No longer the guy who was stressed about the past continuous or the present perfect. He talked more, listened more deeply. He even started learning French to prepare for his expansion project to Montreal. And one night, sitting alone in his apartment, he suddenly realized English was no longer a subject with a handbook full of rules. It had become a part of him. It was as natural as breathing. Maybe you are somewhere on the same path as David, still scared, still hesitant when talking to native speakers. But remember, every awkward sentence, every time you blush because of searching for words, is the time your reflexes are trained. Speak even if your voice is shaky. Make mistakes even if you are embarrassed. Because only then, one day you will naturally laugh and realize, I can speak without having to think about what the next sentence will be. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If it touches your heart, don't hesitate to start a new conversation, even if you stammer and hesitate. Because it is from those moments of hesitation that English will become yours, no longer the book's.